with how it expresses itself for different people in the Sangha. And I'm really enjoying hearing from so many people in all their different ways in, and it sort of enriches that sense of, well, what is going for refuge? What does it mean? And I hope you're finding it as interesting as I am. And also, it gives you a sense of who people are that you see on the screen, and you might meet them occasionally, but a different way into those people and how they express their going for refuge. So tonight it's Paraga. For some reason I can't spot him. Is he? I'm not sure if he's online or offline. But so Paraga is somebody that I don't actually know very well. I've met him a few times. I've seen him around, but I don't know a lot about him. And so in a way, this makes this talk, for me, it makes it even more interesting, because I feel like I'll get to know a little bit more. And I love the title already, From the Lotus Realm to Radford. And I think that's just says a lot. Our Paraga's in the shrine room. That's why I can't spot him. So hi, Paraga. So I'm not going to say much more, just welcome to Paraga, and I'm so glad that you do these talks, because it gives me a chance to get to know you a bit better and gives us a chance to hear about your going for refuge.
Can everyone hear me? Obviously you can in the room.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, good, great. Thanks, Padmasaki. Thank you for that. I need to try and, it's a bit weird trying to look into the camera because it's just this little black thing on a tripod that I won't remember to look at. Anyway, I just wanted to sort of thank Connor, Gareth and Zach, because I'm at the Buddhist Centre, which is amazing to be here, and it's amazing to be with the few of us that are here. It's fantastic. It's lovely to see you all, but just particularly Gareth, Connor and Zach, I mean, you probably can't tell at home, but it's a bit like a military operation, sort of getting people here and doing all the tech and the Zooming and everything. And I feel like a complete techno fool at this point, because I'm just kind of like slightly freaked out by it all and a little bit scared, but they seem to have it in hand. They're much younger than me, which I do feel slightly old kind of on occasions like this, but there you go. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to talk. So we're going to carry on this series around sort of commitment. What does a full sort of committed Dharma life kind of look like? And I think the ideas that we've been hearing from different order members. So I believe it was after Bandhu last week. Was that right? Yeah, good. Unfortunately, I was at work and couldn't get here. And there's a couple more next week. So yeah, so I suppose we're sort of talking about how our going for refuge is sort of expressed in a way. So I said a little while ago that I would do this talk, and I then, which is fine, it's the way it happens, I had to kind of come up with a title for the talk and a blurb, which I always hate doing, because I know that by the time I start writing the talk, the title and the blurb will go down the pan. So I thought the title was pretty good, From the Lotus Realm to Radford. I'm not really going to be talking about that though, because my talk just has just gone in a different direction. Right, that's confusing me, because I can just see myself on the camera. So let me. No, I got it. You sit down, young man. Good. All right, I can see all that. I kept looking at the camera and didn't realize I was just staring at the screen. I was staring at myself. Showing my age. Okay. So yeah, I'm not really going to talk about. There will be a reference at some point, which you might notice from the Lotus Realm to Radford, but I'm not really going to be talking about that. Partly because I wasn't very interested in talking about that. It sounded like a good idea at the time, but then when I turned my mind to it, I I found something that I was more connected with. And if I start doing a talk about something that I'm not interested in, you'll all be terribly bored. You'll join me in being bored. Okay. I think I was more interested in the general theme of sort of how going for refuge is expressed in one's life, particularly, I suppose, if being an order member, one is as committed as one can be to deepening your connection with the nature of reality as put out by the Buddha and Sangha. So I was more interested in what that looks like for different people. And I've always found it fascinating meeting different order members and seeing what it looks like. And I've always found it really helpful as well, seeing how it looks very sort of differently. I think I heard a story in America. So there's at the time, I don't think there were, maybe it was a San Francisco Buddhist center, I'm not sure, but they had one order member, so they all assumed this Buddhist center that this is what order members look like. And then another order member visited from England, and they were like, oh, so maybe it's like that. And they had these two order members, and then they'd get visiting order members, and they end up just being really confused because they realize obviously it just looks really different to different people. Going through Refuge just looks very different. But I find that very sort of interesting, how it looks very different. Okay. So I'm really going to be talking about this sense of, so Sangha had this sort of famous aphorism that we can all base our whole lives on and basically base that quest for enlightenment on, which is, I forgot it, which is commitment is primary. I know this so well, it's because I'm doing a talk, I'm getting nervous. Commitment is primary, lifestyle is secondary, but lifestyle isn't completely unimportant. So commitment is primary, lifestyle is secondary. I mean, you could basically just base your whole life on that. And I find it really interesting as what does it mean by commitment and what does it mean by lifestyle as well? And I think you've got to work I think everyone individually has to work. It's almost like a little koan in a way. It's a bit of a puzzle. It's like, well, what does commitment look like to you? And what would your lifestyle look like if you're committed? Do you have to look like me? Do you have to look like, I don't know, after Bandu last week? Can you be totally different? What does it look like? Because I think we often like easy answers. We like the shortest answer that we can find. But it's a more difficult in the time of Buddhist study. We're not monks and nuns. So we have to work it out for ourselves what a committed life looks like. And you work that out by deepening your going for refuge, deepening your heart connection with the Buddha, the Sangha, and the Dharma. So you've got to do a bit of work to work out what Sangha actually means by that very sort of nice aphorism of whatever it was. Commitment is primary, lifestyle is secondary. So it taught me, it's just to say, I'm still trying to work it out. What commitment is, although I'm that's not always been the problem, but how to work out one's lifestyle as a committed Buddhist. I do feel like I'm still working it out. So there isn't an easy answer. But what I'm going to do tonight is, I suppose, share with you a bit of my journey around working out what commitment has looked like to me and how that's been expressed in my lifestyle and what has and hasn't worked. Just to say for everyone at home, I'm finding it really difficult to look at the camera, say, I'm just going to look at everyone in the room, but I can see you here, so, and you're in my mind. I'm not ignoring you, but it's a bit weird to look at that black spot, which is the camera. Okay. So you're just going to get a bit of a potted sort of Dharma history from me, but in the basis of commitment and the lifestyle. So I first came to the Buddhist Center in 1998. And it wasn't, I mean, I was already meditating at that time, and I started when I was a student. So my sort of commitment to the spiritual life was already quite vivid, and I already knew before I came here, that was the only thing that I really wanted to do in my life. So to some extent, the commitment was sort of straightforward from a certain angle. But I got involved quite quickly, and I started working. We used to have this gift shop in the Broadmoor Centre called the Evolution Shop, and that funded the Buddhist Centre, and I lived in the community upstairs. So I was very lucky in a way to be able to step in and have a context to commit myself to, because, you know, not everyone necessarily did, but I was very lucky that I was able to, you know, work in the shop and live in the community upstairs. So I just threw myself into this spiritual life business, this sort of Dharma life business. But it wasn't that straightforward in a way, because I was in a garage punk band at the time, and before I'd moved to Nottingham, I was in a death metal band up in Burnley. So music had always been very important to me. So when I walked into the Buddhist Centre the first time, I remember I had my bass guitar on my back because I was going to go to rehearsal after meeting Abaya Kirti way back then. But the funny thing was that I used to work at the Evolution Shop. So we used to sell, like, you know, I didn't quite want to work there in a way. It was full of, you know, we sold candles, incense, essential oils, cushions, throws. And as a young man, I wasn't that fussed about, was a young person, I wasn't that fussed about selling wind chimes or gecko CD holders. It didn't, you know, and every so often someone who I knew from the music scene, because our band was fairly well known in Nottingham, someone I knew from the music scene would come in the shop, and I got a duck behind these like horrendous like wooden carvings of monkeys or whatever the hell we used to sell. I'm kind of like, wait till we got out the shop and then kind of struck. So it was almost like it didn't quite work, the sort of lifestyle bit to some extent. I think what you're going to hear is just a bit of a story of how commitment and lifestyle can be, or even just going for refuge, is just quite a scruffy, difficult process to some extent. So I lived in the community upstairs. I'd asked for ordination quite quickly, and I was doing a lot at the centre. I was sort of like kind of Zach and Gareth are, you know, Mitra's asked for ordination and sort of throwing themselves into the life of the centre. I know there's lots of others who are doing that, but they're present. But so I was doing that. I was supporting the Guinness classes, you know, doing Mitra study, doing Refuge group. I was also rehearsing with my band twice a week. And at the weekend, or when we do gigs, I'd just get absolutely pissed, basically, you know, and just get completely sort of drunk. Not all the time, but quite reasonably regularly. And the guys would find it really funny in the band. They'd be like, "Here comes the Buddhist," and I'd be like completely smashed. You know, because they could see that there was something, even they could see there was something weird in my life, that I was sort of totally committed to Buddhism, but would just, you know, would just get sort of totally drunk with him at the weekends and stuff. It even got to the point where I had an art studio in the cellar, and you know, some weekends we'd just go out and just get, you know, take lots of ecstasy and drink a lot. And I'd spend Sunday hiding in the basement. It's like I did that a few times because I just couldn't sort of face being around people on a come down. So it was just sort of ridiculous, you know. It's like, you know, trying to be this sort of good Buddhist, and also as another part of my psyche was just doing its own thing totally. And I didn't really know. There's been a theme that I've not known what to do with that more vigorous, slightly, I don't know, that quite vivid part of my psyche that I didn't quite know what to do with. So this relationship between sort of commitment and lifestyle wasn't really sort of working. And yeah. Okay, where am I up to? So after some time of sort of trying to hold these things, like there was a deepening connection with going for refuge. That was definitely happening. Things were coming simpler in that way, but there was also this other part of my psyche that I just couldn't handle in a way that felt to be very destructive and was felt to be in potential sort of wanting to destroy me. I've not quite got the time to sort of go into that, but it just felt very destructive and like it just wanted to run rampage. And I didn't know what to do with it. And really got to a point where I felt that that part of me was going to destroy me. And it got to a point where I thought that if I keep practicing the Dharma, I'm going to have to look at it. And I knew that something happened in my life, and it tipped me into a place where I thought if I carry on practicing the Dharma, it's going to kill me. And I just had an image of me standing on the edge of this black abyss that was just going to literally swallow me and just destroy me, whatever that image meant. I just knew it was too much to carry on practicing. So I stopped. I left the community quite quickly. I got a flat somewhere, and I just totally deliberately stopped practicing Buddhism, for about 2 or 3 years. I had no intention of coming back. It felt like, I just couldn't come back because it felt as though there's some darkness there to look at, and that darkness is going to get the better of me, and I don't want to die, so I'll just have to stop practicing. I mean, it really felt like that. So, and it felt as well like I had a very vivid jewel in my hand. And I can always remember the image. It felt like I was holding this jewel, and I just couldn't hold it anymore. And I'd had to just let it go and just move off into the darkness. And so that was quite strong, because I still knew that the only thing that was going to save me or that made any sense was Buddhism. And I knew that I didn't want to try to find meaning anywhere else. So it was a very difficult time. So I went off, left the community, and got even messier with the band, and the band turned into another band, and we went off on tour and got a record label and did that for a couple of years, and that was all quite sort of messy in a way. Funnily enough, that was the time that I met Kusala Devi. Actually, I didn't know where to mention that, but I will do. But that was when it was in that period that I met Kusala Devi. But look, so this was about 2004 or 5. But looking back, I realised that I started slowly coming back to a desire to practice the Dharma. I think I'd somehow exercised some inner demons by just letting loose with the band a lot. And I don't think that's a good way to try and exercise demons, because it can and tends to go horribly wrong. But thankfully, I had some Dharma practice behind me. And I think that started to bear fruit. And I think I started coming back to, slowly, very tentatively, coming back to sort of a desire to practice the Dharma. And I started reading Sangha. I had this box of all my Dharma books, and it was taped up and it was hidden. And I was literally afraid of this box, because it held the truth, and it also held a lot of darkness. And a need to sort of grow in it, which just terrified me. So I started tentatively coming back. I read What is the Dharma by Sangha, and it just blew my mind. It's such an amazing book. And at that point, I realized that I wanted to come back to Dharma practice. So I started trying to practice the Dharma whilst on tour with the band. And I remember trying to do it in Europe. And it was, you have this idea of blending in the Dharma, in going for Refuge sometimes, and Buddhism. So, an integrated psyche or deepening practice is like blending milk and water, or sort of flour and water, and it blends quite easily. Trying to practice the Dharma and going for Refuge on tour in Germany with a band is trying to blend oil and water. It was just like, it was really not happening. There was no lovely metaphor for blending there to be found. So I decided to leave the band. I decided to leave the band, which I was definitely glad of. And cutting a long story short, I sort of got ordained fairly quickly after leaving the band. Probably because I'd done a lot of practice before, and I'd somehow managed to negotiate some of this sort of difficulty, so that when I came back, a lot of the energy that was tied up in it was now able to be put into Dharma practice. And I remember a turning point with that, where that dark energy just moved into my meditation, and it felt like my, it was I had a very strong sort of weeks where it felt like something else had taken hold of me that was outside of my sort of not my experience, my will, in a way, just sort of temporarily for a period. And so again, it was another period of trying to work out, okay, what do I do now? It's like the band, commitment and lifestyle. The band wasn't working, so I quit the band and started, just got a job in a sort of social work, support work with sort of adults with learning disabilities and mental health difficulties, which I'd done before as well, which I on the whole sort of enjoyed. What am I talking about? What's next? So I got ordained reasonably quickly after coming back, and definitely felt that I'd been on a journey and felt really ready to sort of be ordained by that point. And just before I got ordained, I moved back into the community upstairs and lived upstairs, shared a room with Jinaraj, which was intense and fun, and then got ordained and sort of moved back here, and then started working for Framework Housing, which is a homeless charity that I'm back working for them now, which I'll say something about in a bit. That's a Radford connection there. So just to sort of, just a bit on sort of like the lifestyle aspect. It was fairly easy in a way, how to express my commitment, because I was working with Framework a bit. I was doing what the work that Ari Varchin does now in the centre. I was Mitra convener. Then I was sort of paid, supported full-time by the centre to do that. So I started working with Framework. But then not long after that, and working quite closely with Arta Bandra, I was asked to go to Padmaloka, but to join the ordination team there, which is a retreat centre in Norwich. So, and that totally felt like the right thing to do. I felt I could do that, and I really desired to do it, to just be in quite an intensive situation like that. So in 2015, I moved to Padmaloka. And to be honest, so Padmaloka is called the Lotus realm, just to explain the talk a bit. Padmaloka is called it means the Lotus realm. So I'm not going to say much about Padmaloka. It was a very sort of spiritually intensive period in a way. I don't think I'm a natural retreat centre dweller, but I loved it. It was very full on. I was there for 5 years, and I really sort of loved it. But then I decided after a few months of sort of confusion, I decided that I wanted to leave Padmaloka. So to end of when did I leave there? Right at the end of 2019, I left Padmaloka. So I've been there 5 years. Moved back to Nottingham with the intention of like moving in with Kusla David and living with it. So I then started again working at Framework Housing, and working in Radford, hence the Padmaloka Radford thing. I mean, in a way that this, this sort of more recent sort of aspect of commitment and lifestyle, particularly since getting ordained, became a lot easier. Stuff just after ordination, stuff just fell into place. Partly because ordination is a very strong ritual in itself on lots of many different levels, but the sort of lifestyle thing sort of fell into place. But it only fell into place for a period. So it's like, and this is the thing, all things being impermanent, being an order member doesn't mean impermanence stops and you get this nice committed lifestyle and everything's sweet, because then everyone will get ordained. If that's the way to find happiness, you become totally committed and get a nice lifestyle and bosh, everything's fine, everyone's happy, everyone would just ask for ordination, but obviously it doesn't kind of work like that. So for a period, it was like I could really throw myself into the energy required on the ordination team at Padmaloka. But then something changed and I couldn't do that anymore. And I've come back to Nottingham, and I'm living a very different lifestyle. And I'm still in a way trying to work out my lifestyle, because I was very involved in the centre, nearly 7 years ago. And then that I've been, come back to Nottingham. And so I'm trying to get a sense of, I'm still trying to work out the lifestyle a little bit. And it's not totally clear. I don't sort of doubt the commitment, but it doesn't always fall into place that one's lifestyle will just become really smooth if the commitment's there. If the commitment's there, on the whole, you probably haven't got too much to worry about, because the lifestyle will work itself out, providing you've got enough sort of shraddha, faith and confidence. The rest will work itself out. And provided one has good enough commitment, one's life will work itself out. But commitment also means integration, positive emotions, spiritual death and rebirth, and receptivity. That's within commitment. So when you're working with those energies, the rest can sort of work itself out, but quite scruffily sometimes. I think I just wanted to finish really on I don't know, there's just this I think I just wanted to share that for me, there's been a thread in my life, and it's probably not that unusual, but I don't know, of chaos as well as commitment and sort of Dharma practice. There's been an element of chaos and what do you call it? I want to use the word sort of damage for some reason, but that's not quite right. There's quite a strong sort of, I often feel quite a strong sort of energy. There's quite destructive, potentially very destructive energy sort of in my psyche. And that's been there all my life. And it feels, I have to say, it feels even stronger now. And it still feels like it will destroy me. Not to the extent it did when I was standing at that abyss in 2004, but it still feels like it will destroy me actually. And it feels fine. And I'm not worried about it. And it feels to be sewn into the deepening of my practice as well. This destructive element. It's also the bodhisattva I meditate on is peaceful Vajrapani, but I also meditate on him in his wrathful form, which has got, he's covered in blue flame. So there's this destructive element that's often been there in my life. But what I think about is a lot of the destructive qualities that are present in the spiritual life. And the image that's one of the strongest images for me is the image of the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, the night he gained enlightenment. And what happens, he doesn't just sit there, become happier and happier and float off like some big smiling kind of, Cheshire cat. What happens is the more he gets absorbed, he gets this attack of Mara. So that's the most vivid image for me in the whole of Buddhism. It's the destructive, potent attack of Mara. And it wasn't Mara having a nudge. It was these demonic, to call it that, forces throwing all of themselves. And that's why you get a lot of these wrathful deities are present, because there's something in us which is deeply destructive that has to be sort of met and transformed. And you don't transform it by just being mindful and kind and smiling at it. It requires sort of a lot of energy. And for me, it's that destruction is still present, but I can see it transforming. Sometimes it just becomes very difficult and I feel like I'm just going to be ripped in two. Sometimes it feels purely the essence of Vajrapani. And I can't always decipher the two, but I know that they're sort of intimately connected. But that's been a thread in my life that's caused friction in this, that has appeared to cause friction in this commitment and lifestyle sort of aspect. And just to finish with, so, I suppose if there's anything to be sort of learned about, maybe not everyone will experience it as intensely as that. Some people might experience it more intensely. Everyone's very different. All order members are very different. I'm sure Artabandi gave a very different talk last week, and you'll get different talks next week. But I think it's partly about, this thing of working out, what does commitment look like to you? What is it you're going to have to work with? How will you express that in your life? How do different order members sort of express that? And and just working it out. But it's a very individual process, working out what going for refuge looks like to you, and how to sort of express it in your life. And yeah, it's just not necessarily sort of straightforward in a way. And even if it is straightforward, it will only be for a period. It's straightforward because this side of a deep insight into the true nature of reality, things, if we don't realize impermanence, which I don't, things will change, and that will cause us sort of an element of dukkha and stress in a way, which is why we have to move directly towards understanding impermanence, dukkha, and insubstantiality. So yeah, thank you very much. That's the end of my talk. So I'll hand over to whoever I'm handing over to.
Thank you, Paraga. That was full of energy. Wonderful, wonderful talk. It was lovely to hear how it isn't a straightforward thing. It's not going to just happen. You know, it's not going to be like, okay, I'm going to start meditating and it's all going to sort. I think you really gave a sense of that, the journey that we're all on, and the power of the transformation that we are trying to effect with our going for refuge in ourselves. So thank you for that. I was particularly moved by that image of having a jewel in your hand and then letting it go and walking into the darkness. I just went gulp. That is so poignant to think you have this jewel and then walk away. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. So I think we've got time for some small groups now to discuss whatever has come up for us out of these talks. So are we ready for the small groups now? Great, thank you. So we'll come back at about just before 25
now, please.